Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome to another KT series episode where in today's episode we're going to be talking about one of the most important aspects of your fishing arsenal, and that's going to be your fishing rods.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to learning.
This episode is brought to you by barbcatchfishing.com. If you guys haven't already, go ahead and check out barbcatchfishing.com where you can learn some tips and tricks on different techniques. They go over different lures, things like that. So if you are ready to level up your fishing game, go ahead and check out barbcatchfishing.com. All right guys, so going into it, we're gonna go ahead and use this rod as an example for everything here. So this is a 13 fishing blackout rod. Now when you pick up a rod, you may see some bit of scriptures on the blank itself, and what you're going to see something along the lines of that. Now it's not going to be this exact same thing, but hopefully after this video you'll be able to interpret what exactly these words mean. Now, before we get into it, let's go ahead and go over the nomenclature of a fishing rod itself, just to go over kind of the basics. So this whole entire piece itself, so the whole entire rod itself is called the blank. Now, the blank can be made out of many different materials such as fiberglass, they have composite rods, they have carbon fiber rods, things like that. But the blank is ultimately going to be the fishing rod. From there, we're going to go ahead and talk about here. This is the reel seat, and this is essentially going to be where your reel attaches to so that you can start casting and things like that. Then from here, you're going to see these little circles on the blanket itself. These are called the guides, or the line guides, or the eyes. And essentially what happens is that you're going to feed the line through these guides here so that you can actually make accurate casts. All right guys, so going into it, right? So there's going to be basically three key things that you want to look for when you are looking at purchasing your next rod. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the power. Now here on this rod in particular, you'll see here that power MH. And the definition of the power, so the power can be defined as how much weight the blank can take before it starts to bend over, or before it starts to kind of give. Now essentially, the reason why that's important is because you want to make sure that you are using the right power for the technique or for the kind of fish that you are targeting. Now, some of the powers can go from ultralight to light to medium light to medium heavy to extra heavy, so on and so forth. And obviously with the more power you have, the more weight that the blank can handle. But keep in mind that generally the higher the power, the more sensitivity that you begin to lose. And what I mean by that is with an ultralight rod, you'll have a lot more sensitivity because the material is going to be a lot thinner, it's going to be a lot weaker, it's going to be a lot more whippy, but by nature it's going to be more sensitive. But also it's not going to be able to throw as heavy lures as, let's just say, compared to like a medium heavy. So a good example would be this guy right here. So if you were to look at it, this medium heavy power right there goes from 3/8 of an ounce to 1 ounce. So basically this blank is optimized for that weight. So 3/8 of an ounce to 1 ounce, and this is a medium heavy. If I were to compare that to this rod right here, which is my Phoenix Feather, this is a heavy powered rod, and the lure weight for this one goes from 1/4 of an ounce to 2 ounces. So that's 1 whole ounce that this rod would be able to handle over that rod without compromising its ability to give you sensitivity, to give you durability, things like that. Now, that is just a general reference. Can you throw 2 ounces with this rod? Yes, you can, but it's not recommended because you can break the tip of this rod, because this rod is manufactured to go up to a 1 ounce. So just use that as a rule of thumb. But essentially the power is going to be the amount of flex, or the amount of weight that the blank can handle. So the higher the power, the more stronger it is, but the less sensitivity you gain. And that goes off to the other side of the spectrum as well, where the more sensitivity you have, the lower the power, but the lower the durability is. You have more sensitivity, but you have a higher chance of breaking it, especially if you are throwing lures that are out of its rating. So that's talking about the power. The next thing that we're going to talk about is the action. And going back over to this rod right here, doesn't necessarily say what action it is, but if you look closely there, you'll see that it says fast. So that part in particular is talking about the action of the rod. Now the action can be defined as how far down in the blank the rod will bend before it gets to what's called the backbone. Now the backbone is going to be where the rod just no longer starts to bend, and that is like the limit of where the rod will actually bend. And a good example that I can show you is, this is going to be my crankbait rod. This is my Phoenix X10. This is a moderate action. As you guys can kind of see there, you kind of see that, you know, there's a lot of give, it's very flexible, things like that. I could actually go further down the blank before I hit that backbone. Very, very parabolic rod. Now, if you were to compare that to this Phoenix Feather, again, this is my heavy rod. This is a fast action, I believe. It's either a fast action or extra fast action. Either way, this is going to be a faster action than that moderate bend. And if you were to compare that, you kind of see maybe that the backbone of this rod is a lot higher than it is on my crankbait rod, my X10. And the reason why that's important is because the action of your rod is arguably the more important thing to consider, because this is when you're going to go into the realm of technique specific things. So you don't want to have a rod that's too moderate or too parabolic if you are fishing a technique where you need a lot of horsepower, where you need to definitely like set the hook and you want to drill that hook through that fish's mouth. You don't want to have something that has a parabolic bend, because it'll bend further into that blank to where that backbone is just deeper in the blank, where you need a technique or a rod that you need to have higher in the blank or higher in the backbone. So that completely didn't make sense, but let me actually kind of explain that a little bit better. So if we were pitching and flipping and we're doing close quarters, I would want a faster action rod, because that will give me enough backbone to drive that hook through that fish's mouth and basically allow me to penetrate that fish's mouth with my hook, because I have a faster action. That backbone is higher up in the blank so that there's a lot less give. Now, where that's bad is for treble hook baits, such as a crankbait. And the reason being is because if you have too stiff of a rod when you're cranking, what that allows the fish to do, there's so much pressure in between the rod and the lure itself, it actually acts as if like it's a slingshot. So having too stiff of a rod can rip that bait out of that fish's mouth. But having too parabolic of a rod doesn't give you enough horsepower to actually drive that hook. So the action of the rod is very, very important towards what exactly you're trying to accomplish. Now going back into it, if I were to have one rod, or if there was one rod that I would consider my go-to or very generalized, would be a medium heavy fast action rod, anywhere between like the 7 foot to 7.5 foot range, just because I kind of feel as though that is good for a lot of techniques, but not really perfect for any one technique in particular. Now, the reason why this is all important is because as you kind of advance in your fishing career, or as you advance in your fishing level, you'll find that there's going to be rods that are made better for some techniques than others. And that's actually why I carry 10 rods with me on my kayak, because every single one of those rods has a specific taper or is built a specific way to tailor off of that specific technique. So a good example would be my Phoenix X10. This is a medium powered moderate action rod. I use this for my shallow cranking. This one right here is a Phoenix M1. This is a 7 foot 2 inch medium heavy fast action. Then this is what I use for my top waters. And then another one that I have here is, again, my heavy pitching and flipping, which is a Phoenix Feather 7-1 heavy extra fast action, or I think this is either extra fast or a fast action, but either way, all of my rods or all of my setups are made to do a specific thing, which is why I have so many rods on the deck with me at all times. But again, guys, going back over to it, you do not have to get something specific in order to catch fish. Now, will it help you in landing more fish? Absolutely. But is it required? Absolutely not. You know, I started off with like I remember back in the day, back when I used to live in Texas, when we were fishing like rivers and small ponds and things like that, I would go over to Walmart and we would buy those Shakespeare micro spins, I think it was called. But those things were like 5 foot ultralight rods with like 500 series reels. They're really made for panfish and, you know, smaller game fish, but I caught a lot of largemouth on that. I actually caught quite a bit of hybrid bass inside there as well, and had tons and tons of fun doing it. So you don't need to spend a lot of money to have fun out on the water and be successful. So that's really one of the driving points that I want to give you guys, is that you do not need to go out of your budget to be successful on the water. Go out there, spend money, spend your money on something that you can afford. Don't go out of your budget just because you want something nicer. Stay within your budget, and hopefully this video will give you guys a little bit more information as to what kind of rod to buy, and hopefully that'll help you with your next decision on what you want to get. So, all right guys, so that is gonna be it for today's video.